Welcome to World of Monsters. I'm Monster Master Arthur, and today I'd like to invite you on my journey in painting this acrylic painting of Pyramid Head. Pyramid Head of Silent Hill. And I created this painting as a gift for a long time, very close friend of mine. So I started by priming the canvas with black and leaving kind of two shades to keep it a little bit more interesting, and I knew where I wanted the main light to be coming from. And one of the main challenges that already struck here was the positioning of Pyramid Head and where I wanted him. I was afraid that your eye would be going off the left side too much, so I used the Fibonacci spiral to help out here in the Fibonacci rectangles. Here you can see the layout a little bit more clearly. And so after that I applied this glaze, and glaze is pretty much watered down paint, or if you're using some kind of other liquid to break down your paint. And next I blocked out the main areas of Pyramid Head. I applied another layer of glaze and then started to work on Pyramid Head a little bit more. So there's kind of a hole in the wall to the right of him, but I didn't want it to be too strong to detract or distract from him, but to sort of balance out the painting.
Is we have a shipment of merchandise. It would be unfortunate, however, if we showed up to deliver our heroine.
And yet another layer of glaze. I found it very effective to use a paper towel to wipe off the glaze, especially if you got too thick or if the pigment's not thinned down enough. Now I'm starting to put more form and character into the back wall. Lots of reds, lots of yellows in the whole painting. Unlike you'd probably do for a commercial or professional painting, you would first have a completed sketch. Here I had the basics of the form that I wanted, but I knew I want to play around with a little bit with the final details later on and keep it more free-flowing and kind of see where my imagination mixed with the painting took me. I used a white charcoal pencil here to kind of sketch out the arm again.
And it's only 5 inches by 7 inches, so it's a rather small painting. And you can see I did a pretty crude drawing here on the board already. It was just something I threw out pretty quickly, no plan.
And as you can hear, it was very Jeff Maricola inspired and motivated, as he's one of the only, possibly the only artist on YouTube that does acrylic and oil paintings of fantasy type stuff and also teaches it. Whereas most artists on YouTube are either digital artists if they're working in this theme, or if they work with oils or acrylics, they do realistic art, non-fictional art, and or sceneries.
And it's a mess. It's all a big mess at this stage. You've heard punch through that wall, you got to get past this stage, because this can be the discouraging stage of your painting where it's just horrible looking.
So once again, I thank Jeff Maricola for the inspiration and motivation. You guys should definitely go check him out when you have the time. That's Jeff Maricola. Adding some dark crevices.
I also like soft edges in my paintings. And that's what you see.
At this point, the sword is going more and more into the background, and I didn't want the sword to be also too distracting from the main area, although I wanted it to be there, or at least the idea of it to be clearly represented.
That the face of the beast always becomes known. The time of the beast always passes.
One of the first pretty much finished forms that I had here was the actual pyramid itself. And it was also the last area I gave detail to right before finishing the entire painting up. pyramid highlights. The overall pyramid shape stayed the same, but I did elongate the bottom edge of it later to go more with the changed anatomy of the torso, as here the anatomy looked nice, but it actually didn't make full sense with the figure in its position, as it was a lot more stretched out, and here it looks more in a sort of tightened or relaxed position with the fuller chest, but in reality the chest would have been very stretched out, and that's what you'll see later. Here I'm starting to add the blues and the whites to the skin, give it a very pale sort of feel. Remember, there's nothing wrong with finger painting.
If that would have gone off, that would have been the end of our silver bullet.
Starting to work on the skirt a little bit here. And as you can see, this was one variation of the belt. I changed the belt a few times, actually. That's one of the things in the painting I changed the most. I tried different versions, and that's the beautiful thing with paint. If you don't like it, just paint over it, just as you would in Photoshop. And here's another couple more layers, or triple more layers of yellowish glaze. At this point, I knew I wanted the skirt to be not like a cotton material or something. I wanted it to be a skin. I just wasn't very sure of what sort of skin I wanted, like a cow kind of worn old leather or human skin. And so let's see which direction we went with. Again, the sword in the background has been already positioned and measured out, so as it would keep its position throughout the progression of the rest of the artwork. And the right hand was also just there as a sort of placeholder until I was finished with the other stuff. And I kind of played back and forth, working in different areas, seeing what's dry and where I can take advantage of working. Beautiful thing with real painting and gravity is you can just kind of let it go and do its thing, and even if you cover it up, such as these streaks, they can still leave a little bit of character deep under the layers of paint. At this point, I fixed up the anatomy to where I sort of wanted the final layout of it, and to do that I used a white brush pen and a black pen. And they worked beautifully because the black pen would actually disperse or dissolve with the acrylic paint and the water within it. So it would kind of blend in and keep its dark form nicely, while the white brush pen did not dissolve at all. It kept its position beautifully, so you really had to cover it with paint to cover that highlight. But it was a nice director of where I was supposed to be going with the highlighting.
Alright, so now I want to put some splatters on this thing, and I don't want to make a mess on my dining room table, because I don't want anybody getting upset with me. So I lay down some newspaper, and I use a latex glove, and an old toothbrush.
And there you have it. You can probably learn more from the little segments of what you hear Jeff saying here than I myself, as he has over, I believe, 40 years of experience in painting. As he so mentions, I did want to keep this sort of fun and experimental while sticking to something that I already had envisioned, especially the feel of the whole presentation. Going with the theme of having the skin skirt, I wanted to be kind of patched together. And here's a technique I used to show sort of stitches, or that it was sewn together without doing it too detailed and doing every single stitch. In doing this also with the shade, the leather kind of look thicker, but I did thin it down a little bit later so it doesn't look so thick and like warm skin, but you can definitely get this effect for, let's say, an ogre out in misty snowy mountains. I kind of like this idea of many thin belts going kind of around, but it was a little bit busy with the abs and the complex anatomy right there. And here we go with another belt change, and you can see that I used the white charcoal pencil to outline and fix parts of the anatomy that I wasn't happy with, as well as the belt. And here's after adding some more glazes and having worked more on the anatomy and the skirt itself. So I believe at this point we're pretty much done with the anatomy. I soaked his left hand in blood. I gave the sword a sort of painterly, rustic feel and touch to it to take away from the realism that you see with the abs and the torso. I kept a simple belt so as not to complicate that area anymore, and little hints of blood here and there and things like that, maybe little Easter eggs throughout the painting. I blended the sort of rusty background a little bit more so that the darks and the lights weren't too sharp together, as this is the background and it's not supposed to be too sharp, too contrasty. Although it's quite contrasty, but only from this side. Going to the left, it loses a lot of its contrast. Again, I wanted to keep the edges there pretty soft for the most part. And finally, without having the right equipment and sort of setup, I found that it can be quite challenging to take a great photograph of a painting displaying all the colors as I saw them. So I took a few shots in different lighting situations and some with a little bit of edited enhancements. Overall, at this point, a strong piece of advice that I am confident that I can give is to try to always use the best lighting possible that you can get when working on something colorful like this, when working on a painting. In my opinion, nothing beats sunlight, although it depends how that sunlight is shining and from what angle. But take advantage of that sunlight during the day. What I tended to do myself was work on the larger, less detailed areas during evenings, and during the day I would work on the more intricate, detailed areas and the areas involving more contrasty colors. If you guys enjoyed this, please let me know down below, as I enjoy gathering these kind of statistics for what kind of content you guys like, what I should be uploading more, less, and such. Until next time, you've been watching this acrylic painting of the Great Pyramid Head of Silent Hill.